The moment his phone screen lit up, my entire world froze. A message popped up, just one sentence, but it was enough to make my heart drop. "Can't wait to see you again tonight." I stared at it for a few seconds, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me, hoping that maybe it was just a friend. But deep down, I already knew the truth. My hands were shaking as I placed his phone back where I found it. He was in the shower humming, as if nothing in the world could ever go wrong. I should have screamed. I should have cried. But I didn't. Because in that exact moment, something inside me changed. The pain didn't break me, it built me. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "He has no idea what's coming." How do you destroy someone who once meant everything to you? Without losing yourself in the process? If someone had told me back then that this story would end in betrayal, I would have laughed. Because in the beginning, it felt like a movie, the kind you never want to end. I met Ryan 3 years ago, on one of those rainy afternoons that somehow make strangers feel connected. I'd ducked into a little cafe near my office, soaked and freezing, clutching my half-broken umbrella. He was already there, sitting in the corner, reading a book and sipping coffee like he'd been waiting for something, or maybe someone. I remember how he smiled when he noticed me struggling to dry my coat with a napkin. "You look like you just fought a thunderstorm," he joked. I laughed, embarrassed. Yeah, and lost miserably. That was how it began, a joke, a shared laugh, a spark that felt too easy to ignore. We spent hours talking that day. About music, movies, dreams. He told me he was an architect working on a big project downtown. He spoke with passion, like he could see beauty in everything, even chaos. I didn't know it then, but that conversation would become one of my favorite memories for years. After that, we were inseparable. Morning texts, late-night calls, weekend getaways. He made me feel like I was the center of his world, and I wanted to believe I really was. My friends used to tease me, saying, "You look happier than ever." And I was, at least for a while. Ryan was charming, too charming, maybe. He knew exactly what to say to make me smile. He'd show up at my office with coffee, leave little notes in my bag saying, "You're my favorite part of every day." It all felt perfect, almost too perfect. But love has a way of blinding you to small details. Like the times he'd cancel dinner plans last minute, claiming he had work emergencies. Or when his phone would ring during movie nights and he'd step out whispering into it. I told myself it was stress, deadlines, clients. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Months turned into years. We moved in together. I thought that was a new chapter, something real, something stable. We painted the walls ourselves, fought over curtain colors, laughed until midnight. The first real sign came one evening when I noticed a perfume scent on his jacket, not mine. It was subtle, floral, unfamiliar. When I asked, he smiled and said, "One of the clients hugged me after the meeting. She's overly friendly." I wanted to believe him. So I did. Because love makes excuses long before logic arrives. But small doubts grew roots. Every time he was late, every time his phone faced down on the table, I felt that tiny sting of unease. I hated feeling like that, suspicious, insecure. It wasn't me. Then came the work trip. 3 days out of town. He promised to call every night. The first night he did. The second, just a text. The third, silence. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was losing my mind or my relationship. When he came home, he was exhausted, or at least he said so. He hugged me, told me he missed me. And for a moment, I believed it all again. But deep down, I think a part of me already knew something had changed. Still, I held on, because that's what you do when you love someone. You fight for them, even when they've stopped fighting for you. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that every couple goes through this. I ignored the late nights, the secretive smiles at his phone, the shift in his energy. And when he'd kiss my forehead and say, "You overthink too much," I'd smile, pretending he was right. Looking back now, I wish I had trusted my instincts. I wish I'd seen the truth sooner. But maybe that's what makes betrayal so cruel. It hides behind the things that once made you feel safe. At the time, I was just a woman in love, trying to protect the fairy tale I'd built. I didn't realize that fairy tales don't need villains from outside sometimes. They live right next to you, sleeping in the same bed, saying "I love you" while plotting their next lie. Still, I remember the exact moment I decided to stop pretending. It wasn't the text message I found that night, it was the silence before it. The feeling of being alone in a room full of shared memories. That's when I knew something was about to change. Because when love starts fading, secrets start growing. And his secret was just waiting to be found. I just didn't know it yet. The truth is, when you finally see betrayal with your own eyes, it doesn't come with fireworks or screaming. It comes quietly, like the sound of something precious breaking inside you. After that day at the cafe, I couldn't unsee it. His smile, her laughter, the way he held her hand. It replayed in my mind over and over like a cruel film I never wanted to star in. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I went home that night, sat on the couch, and stared at the walls we'd painted together pale blue, his favorite color. Everything around me was a reminder of the lie I'd been living. The pictures on the wall, the mugs on the counter, the flowers he'd bought the week before talk me up. Suddenly, it all looked staged, like props in a story that wasn't real anymore. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I didn't. I just sat there in silence, tears falling one after another until I couldn't tell if it was anger or grief anymore. Later that night, he came home smiling, humming that same tune he always did. I watched him drop his keys, loosen his tie, and say, "Hey, babe, miss me?" My throat tightened. For a split second, I almost said everything that I knew, that I saw him, that I followed him. But something inside me whispered, "Not yet." So I smiled back. Of course I did. He leaned in to kiss me. I froze just for a second, but he didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to care. The days that followed were the hardest. Pretending to love someone who'd already betrayed me felt like acting in a play I didn't audition for. Every word, every smile, every touch, fake. But I had to be careful, because the best revenge starts when the other person still thinks you're blind. I started collecting proof small things, nothing too obvious. Screenshots, receipts, patterns. I didn't want to confront him without knowing exactly what I was dealing with. But then, fate decided to push me faster than I planned. It was a Friday evening. We were supposed to go out with friends, but he said he had to work late again. I nodded, pretending to understand. He kissed my forehead and left. I didn't intend to, I swear I didn't. But something told me to check his email. His password was the same one he used for everything. Within seconds, I was inside. My hands shook as I scrolled through his inbox. Most of it was work-related, boring, routine, until I saw a folder labeled private. My stomach flipped. Inside were dozens of messages sent and received from her, the same name from the texts I'd seen weeks ago, and attached to them were pictures. Them together, at restaurants, on the beach, in his car. My breath caught. My chest ached so badly it felt like my ribs might crack. Each photo was a confession, each word a dagger. And then I saw it in email draft, never sent, sitting in his folder. I'm going to tell her soon. She doesn't deserve to be kept in the dark. I read it twice, 3 times. My mind went blank. Tell me soon? Tell me what? That I was just a placeholder until he was ready to move on? My hands slammed the laptop shut before I realized what I was doing. The sound echoed through the quiet apartment. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it could burst. That was it. I couldn't pretend anymore. I sat there in the dark for hours, waiting for the man who had lied to my face to come home and act like everything was normal again. When the door finally opened, I didn't move. I just watched him walk in, take off his jacket, and smile. "Hey, you're still up." My voice came out steady, too. "Steady. We need to talk." He froze. "Okay. What's wrong?" "You tell me," I said, crossing my arms. "Maybe start with your emails." His face drained of color. "What emails?" "Don't play dumb, Ryan," I said. "The ones you sent to her. The ones with the photos. The ones where you promised to tell me soon." He opened his mouth, closed it again. For a moment, he just stood there silent, trapped, cornered. "I can explain," he finally said. "Explain what?" I snapped. "That you've been lying to me for months? That you made me feel crazy every time I questioned you?" His voice cracked. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like," I shouted. The sound echoed in the small apartment. "Tell me why I wasn't enough." He stared at me, speechless. Then the worst thing he could have done, he sighed. That sound broke me more than his words ever could. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was exhaustion. Like I was the problem for finding out. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said finally. "I just fell for someone else. I didn't plan it." The words hit like ice water. I stared at him, this man I'd given everything to, and realized the person standing in front of me wasn't mine anymore. "Then why didn't you leave?" I whispered. "Because I didn't want to hurt you," he said. I laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh. "You didn't want to hurt me? Ryan, you destroyed me." He tried to reach for me. I stepped back. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't touch me. Don't say sorry. You made your choice." The silence after that felt heavier than any scream. I walked past him, into the bedroom, and closed the door. My body shook uncontrollably, tears finally breaking free. I pressed my hand to my mouth to stop the sobs from escaping. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning through every memory, every lie. And somewhere between heartbreak and rage, a calm washed over me. Because I realized something. He'd taken my love, my trust, my peace, but I still had one thing he didn't know about: my control. From that moment on, I promised myself he wouldn't get away with this. But my revenge wouldn't be cruel or loud. It would be poetic, patient, unforgettable. He broke my heart in silence. I would return the favor in silence. After the betrayal, the first hour felt like a fever dream. By the second day, that fog cleared. Grief is loud at first, but then something else takes over, a slow, steady clarity. I realized revenge wasn't about spectacle. It was a language, and I needed to learn how to speak it without sounding hysterical. I wanted him to feel the loss, the humiliation, the emptiness he had handed me. But more than that, I wanted to rebuild myself on the other side of it. That would be the real victory. So I made a list. Not a dramatic list scrawled in the heat of the moment, but a careful one, neat, factual, with no room for emotional exaggeration. If I was going to make him pay, it would be with truth. Truth that couldn't be argued away. I gathered the photos, the messages, the email drafts. I printed receipts, screenshots, and dates. My apartment became an archive of his lies. It felt strange, like I was cataloging evidence for a case I didn't know I'd be taking to court. But I wasn't after punishment by law. I wanted clarity and proof that would stand up whether he tried to dismiss it as a mistake or pretend it never happened. He had the advantage of secrecy. He had the private messages, the hidden dates, the late-night laughter. I had the truth, but truth without visibility is just a whisper. I decided to make sure the people who mattered, my friends, my family, and those closest to our life together, knew the whole story. Not as a rant or to humiliate him publicly, but as a careful, calm explanation so my reality wouldn't be gaslit away. That meant choosing my moments. I called my sister first. I showed her the photos. I told her the timeline. She cried, then she hugged me, then she helped me breathe. Then I called my closest friends, the ones who'd been at our wedding dinner. The ones who knew what kind of man I thought he was. They were shocked, and they were furious on my behalf. That support mattered more than I expected. It became the backbone of everything I planned next. Step 3. Find leverage without destroying what I still wanted to keep. I knew rage wanted to burn everything down, but that would only leave ash. What I wanted was consequence that fit the betrayal. Ryan had built a life based on reputation, polite smiles at the firm, respect from clients, projects that bore his name. I didn't need to ruin him. I needed to show him that his choices had real cost. The goal was to make him feel the loss of what he'd taken for granted. So I started by gathering the small professional threads he left in plain sight. The receipts with client names. the messages that mentioned meetings. The little habits, how he always bragged about that one influential friend at the firm. I made a meticulous map of his world. Colleagues, clients, social circles. Not to drag them in, but to expose the cracks he'd hidden behind. I didn't want to humiliate him in a frenzy. I wanted moments that felt precise and, above all, undeniable. For weeks, I set up quiet encounters. I invited the people who mattered to us, friends who'd stood with me in good times. I asked questions publicly, in places where whispers spread naturally. A small dinner, a group text, a casual brunch. I didn't accuse. I just asked. I let him flail. I let the truth be the awkward guest no one could ignore. Another tactic was reclaiming what he'd taken emotionally. I wrote. Not angry posts, not nights of rage, but steady, honest messages that explained my side if anyone asked. I didn't plaster the internet with details. I was careful with privacy, but I made sure that if anyone wondered, my voice was there, calm, clear, unafraid. Before I moved any needle publicly, I sat down with a lawyer friend, someone who could explain boundaries without inflaming the situation. He told me what I could and couldn't do, and, more importantly, what would actually matter long-term. Contracts, shared assets, anything that could be used to gaslight or threaten me later, I made sure my bases were covered. It felt grown-up and boring and absolutely necessary. I wasn't going to be blindsided again. Emotionally, I joined a small support group. Not to plot revenge, but to steady myself. It's amazing how much strength you get when other people hand you theirs, quietly. You don't have to be a battlefield alone. I learned how to breathe through the rage, how to turn that energy into something productive. That discipline turned my pain into focus. The plan had to have a moment. Not a scream, but a silence. Not a messy confrontation, but a reveal so clean it would leave him speechless. I thought about dramatic scenes the kind movies have, but real life is quieter. So my flourish was simple. A public, composed conversation where the truth would be impossible to dismiss. I arranged it in a way that aligned with his ego in front of people he respected. At a time he expected applause rather than exposure. It was petty in the most satisfying way. He loved being admired, so I'd turn admiration into judgment. I practiced my lines. Not the angry ones, the measured ones. Because when you speak carefully while someone gaslights, your calm becomes the loudest thing in the room. The plan was to be so solid, so composed, that anyone watching would see which story was real. I knew his reaction could vary. He might deny. He might beg. He might walk away without glancing back. I prepared for each. I imagined being stalked by doubt, by whispers, by second-guessing. So I assembled practical supports, friends on call, screenshots backed up in multiple places, a small emergency fund I could access if things got messy. I told myself my life would not be hostage to his temper. Most importantly, I started planning what I'd do after the reveal. It wasn't enough to watch him crumble. I wanted to rebuild new routines, new places, small joys he didn't get to steal. I booked a weekend trip alone. I signed up for a class I'd always wanted. I started to imagine a future that didn't include him. And that future felt like oxygen. Revenge, I learned, isn't an explosion. It's architecture. It's patience, precision, and the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed with dignity. It's not about making someone suffer for the sake of pain. It's about making them understand consequence, while you reclaim your peace. That's when I knew the next steps. The moment I'd been waiting for, where his world and mine would collide in a way that left no space for lies, was coming. I closed the folder of printed emails and photos, breathed in, and told myself, this is not about hate. It's about justice. It's about moving forward. The plan was set. The pieces were in place. Now, all that remained was to wait for the right moment. The day it all came together didn't feel like a movie. It felt ordinary. The sun rose like any other morning, spilling light across my room. My coffee tasted the same. My phone buzzed with messages from people who had no idea what was about to happen. It was almost funny how the world can stay normal even when you're about to turn yours upside down. Ryan had been walking around the past few days like nothing was wrong. Maybe he thought I'd accepted his apology. Maybe he believed my silence meant forgiveness. He had no idea I'd been planning something far more deliberate. That night, he had an event, a company dinner. He'd been bragging about it for weeks. A night to celebrate a big client deal. I knew every name on the guest list. He'd mentioned them all, proudly. His boss, his mentor, his team, all people who thought he was the perfect man, devoted and trustworthy. I decided that would be the night. I arrived early. I'd been invited before, of course, back when we were still the couple everyone admired. I used that to my advantage. A few people greeted me warmly, unaware of the storm underneath my calm smile. Ryan arrived later, all charm and confidence, shaking hands, laughing too loudly. I watched him from across the room, wondering how many of those smiles were rehearsed. He spotted me and froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to see fear flicker in his eyes. Then he smiled and waved. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, walking up. I smiled. I wouldn't miss it. "Big night for you, isn't it?" He nodded, confused but trying to play it cool. "Yeah, I guess it is." "Good," I said quietly. "Then you'll want to be honest tonight." We were surrounded by people, laughter, champagne glasses clinking. He couldn't react too strongly, not here. That was the point. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said under his breath, the fake smile never leaving his face. "You will," I whispered. The evening carried on. Speeches began. The host thanked everyone, praised the team, and then called Ryan up for a short talk about trust and teamwork. The irony almost made me laugh. He walked up confidently, taking the microphone, beaming at the crowd, and that's when I stood calm, collected, steady. I stepped toward the front, just as he began to speak. "Excuse me," I said softly, loud enough for the mic to pick up. The room went still. Ryan blinked, thrown off. "Oh, hey. This is before. You continue," I said, holding up a small folder. "I think it's only fair everyone hears what trust means to you." His face drained of color. "Don't," he whispered sharply. "Not here." "Why not?" I asked softly. "You had no problem lying here. Why should the truth bother you?" The room murmured. A few people exchanged glances. The tension was electric quiet, suffocating. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just opened the folder. Emails. Photos. "Messages," I said, my voice steady. "Proof of every promise you broke while you stood here talking about integrity." He tried to grab the folder, but I stepped back. "No need," I said calmly. "Everyone here will get their own copy by tomorrow morning. I've already sent them." "You think this makes you look strong?" he hissed. "This is pathetic." "No," I said quietly. "What's pathetic is pretending to be good while you betray everyone who trusts you." Someone in the crowd gasped. His boss shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe next time," I added, "you'll think twice before preaching about loyalty." Then I turned and walked away. No yelling, no theatrics, just silence following me like a shadow. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I took a deep breath for the first time in months. My hands shook a little, not from fear, but from the release. Behind me, I could hear voices rising. Questions. Whispers. The sound of his perfect world starting to crack. I didn't look back. Not once. Later that night, I sat by the river. I watched the city lights shimmer and ripple across the water. I thought about how much I'd lost and how much I'd gained. Because revenge, I realized, isn't about destruction. It's about balance. It's about returning what was taken not in chaos, but in calm. People always think revenge means rage. But it's not. It's patience. It's grace. It's quiet power. It's looking your pain in the eye and saying, "You don't own me anymore." When I got home, I found a dozen missed calls, a few messages, one from him. "Please, let's talk." "You didn't have to do that." I smiled. For once, I didn't feel the need to reply. I deleted the message, turned off my phone, and let the silence fill the room. I realized that night that the real climax wasn't exposing him. It was freeing myself. All those months I thought I needed him to see my worth, to regret his choices, but standing there, walking away with my head high, I understood something bigger. Closure isn't given. It's taken. And I'd finally taken mine. Maybe one day he'll remember that night and feel what I felt when I found out the truth. Maybe he won't. But either way, my story won't end there. His chapter in it is finished. The rest of it, that's all mine. The morning after felt different. Not lighter, not exactly, but cleaner. Like the air after a thunderstorm, when the rain has washed everything raw and real. For the first time in months, I woke up without dread. No buzzing anxiety in my chest, no endless replay of his words in my head. Just stillness. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching sunlight slide across the floorboards. The same apartment that once felt like a cage suddenly looked like freedom. I'd half expected regret to hit me, that gnawing voice that says, maybe you went too far. But it didn't come. Instead, there was quiet certainty. I hadn't destroyed him. I'd just revealed him. And that was the difference between vengeance and justice. A few days later, I heard from mutual friends. The fallout was exactly what I'd expected. His reputation had taken a hit, not catastrophic, just honest. People saw him differently now. Some avoided him. Others pitied him. But I didn't care, because by then I'd already moved past it. I was too busy piecing myself back together. Healing isn't cinematic. It's not music swelling as you walk away. It's small, unglamorous steps sleeping through the night again, going to work without faking smiles, realizing you laughed without forcing it. I started journaling again. Not about him, about me. Things I wanted to do, places I wanted to go, books I wanted to read, dreams I had buried under some day. I signed up for a pottery class. It sounds cliché, but there was something deeply therapeutic about shaping clay, something fragile turning into something strong under your hands. It reminded me of myself. I started going on walks again. Sometimes I'd pass the cafe where I first saw him with her. The pain would still flicker for a moment, but it didn't control me anymore. It was like looking at an old scar. It doesn't hurt. It just reminds you how you healed. Weeks turned into months. The people around me noticed the change before I did. My sister told me my voice sounded lighter on the phone. My friends said my laughter didn't sound forced anymore. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in a store window and almost didn't recognize myself, not because I looked different, but because I finally looked present. That's when I realized I didn't just want to move on from Ryan. I wanted to move toward myself. One night, I found an old photo of us in a drawer. We were smiling, carefree, frozen in a time before everything cracked. For a second, I felt that familiar ache. But instead of tearing it up, I placed it in a box with other memories and closed it. Not to forget, but to let it rest. Because some stories don't need rewriting. They just need closure. A few weeks later, he called. I saw his name flash across the screen, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. Just calm curiosity. I let it ring out, but then something inside me said, "End it on your terms." So I answered. "Hey," he said, his voice soft, uncertain. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." "I know," I said quietly. Silence stretched between us. "You really hurt me, Ryan," I continued, "but I think we both know this isn't about fixing anything. It's about finally letting go." "I never wanted to," he began. "You did," I interrupted gently. "And it's okay. I'm done holding it against you. But I'm also done holding on to you. Goodbye," I said. And before he could answer, I hung up. For a moment, the silence after the call felt heavy, then it felt like peace. That was the last time we spoke. After that, life began to bloom again, quietly but surely. I redecorated the apartment, changed the walls from pale blue to warm ivory. I bought plants that thrived in sunlight. I learned to cook new recipes, played music loud, danced barefoot in the kitchen. My life wasn't defined by the betrayal anymore. It was defined by what I built after it. The truth is, revenge gave me closure, but healing gave me freedom. There's a kind of beauty in knowing you can survive the worst someone does to you and still choose kindness, still choose peace. I stopped looking for justice from him and started finding justice in living well. Every scar I carried became proof of strength, not damage. Every tear shed became a seed for something new. People asked me sometimes if I regretted how I handled it. I always smiled and said no, because I didn't just lose someone, I found myself. One evening, I went back to the river, the same spot where I'd stood after exposing him. The water shimmered in the moonlight, calm and endless. I thought about everything, the love, the betrayal, the revenge, the healing, and for the first time I whispered to myself, "Thank you." Not to him, but to me, for surviving, for staying, for finally walking away. Betrayal broke me. Revenge steadied me. But healing rebuilt me. And if I ever meet someone like him again, I won't seek revenge. I'll simply smile because I know now. Karma doesn't need an audience. It just needs time. You know, people think betrayal is the worst thing that can happen to you, and maybe it is at first. It shatters something deep inside, something you didn't even know was fragile. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes betrayal is also the beginning. Because when the dust finally settles, you start to see things clearly, who you were, who they were, and what you actually deserve. For a long time, I thought revenge would make me feel powerful. I thought exposing him, watching him crumble, would finally heal the wound he left. But it didn't, not completely. What healed me wasn't his downfall. It was realizing that I could rebuild without him, that my happiness was never his to control. Revenge gave me closure. Healing gave me peace. And walking away, that gave me power. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes from not needing to explain your pain to the person who caused it. You just grow beyond it. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop expecting them to see your worth. You just become the proof of your own survival. If you're listening to this and you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, loved, or built your world around, I want you to remember something. What they broke in you is not permanent. You can rebuild stronger, wiser, and freer. I know it feels impossible now. I know every night feels heavier than the last. But one day, you'll wake up and realize you've stopped checking your phone, stopped wondering why, stopped needing answers. Because healing doesn't arrive all at once. It slips in quietly in laughter with friends, in mornings that don't hurt anymore, in realizing that you made it through. Don't let betrayal define you. Let it sharpen your intuition, strengthen your boundaries, teach you who deserves access to your heart and who doesn't. Because sometimes losing the wrong person is the universe's way of clearing space for peace. Looking back, I don't hate Ryan, not anymore. I don't forgive him either, at least not in the way people expect. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what someone did. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying it. I let go. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. There's a saying, revenge is for closure, but peace is for freedom. And I believe that now. My revenge wasn't about hurting him, it was about reminding myself that I wasn't powerless, that I could stand up, speak truth, and then walk away with my head high. That's the real victory. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't shouting, exposing, or even planning. It's smiling because you survived something meant to break you. It's succeeding quietly while they wonder how you kept going. It's peace. Real, unshakable peace. If I could go back and talk to the version of myself who cried that first night, the one who stared at the phone, heartbroken, shaking, lost, I'd tell her this. You won't always feel this way. The ache will fade. The memories will blur. And one day, you'll thank yourself for not giving up when it hurt the most. Because the pain that almost destroyed you will become the reason you rise higher than ever before. So if you're standing in the ruins right now, betrayed, broken, doubting your worth, don't rush to rebuild for them. Rebuild for you. Take your time. Heal at your pace. Learn your lessons, but don't let them make you bitter. Because someday, when peace finally finds you again, You'll look back and realize the betrayal wasn't the end of your story. It was just the plot twist you needed to find your real self. And maybe that's what life is, a series of betrayals and recoveries, losses and lessons, endings that lead to better beginnings. Maybe revenge stories aren't really about vengeance at all. Maybe they're about redemption. Because in the end, the best revenge is peace.